Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. And what you're looking at here is Hurricane Otis that just hit Mexico. And it was as bad as this looks. I'm going to show you a bunch of videos of what happened. This broke records. Just another sign of the times. Also, I wanted to show you some things in case you missed it. Some things said in Turkey by Erdogan about Israel and just, seemingly a further escalation and not a good sign as far as where Turkey stands and who they're supporting. And then after this, this comes up somewhat frequently on the channel whenever we're talking about the millennium and how everyone's going to be translated at that point, everyone that remains. There's always like things that come up. This has been since the beginning of my channel, where there's like confusion about what it means to be translated and getting it mixed up with transfigured and mixing up the terms quickened. And I don't know. I don't know why. It's not a complicated thing, but I'm going to show you what I have on my quotes A through Z spreadsheet so that there's no misconceptions. There's no misunderstanding of what these terms mean. Okay. So we'll do that after we go through the hurricane and all that stuff. Okay, Colin McCarthy. Hashtag Otis is now a Category 5, and a direct landfall as a Category 5 on Acapulco, Mexico, is now forecast. Now, of course, this has already happened. I just wanted to show you this graphic so you can see how fierce it looks. This is a true nightmare scenario for the 1 million people who call Acapulco home, as they have had less than 24 hours to prepare for a catastrophic strike from a Category 5 storm. This is unprecedented in the 21st century to have this strong of a storm threaten this densely populated of an area with such little time to prepare. Okay, so now I don't know who this is, but I can confirm what he said with what said here on Fox Weather. Hurricane Otis makes historic Category 5 landfall as nightmare scenario unfolds near Acapulco, Mexico. Hurricane Otis made a historic landfall near Acapulco, Mexico at Category 5 intensity early Wednesday, packing in destructive winds up to 165 miles per hour. Otis was the strongest hurricane to ever make landfall on the Pacific side of Mexico. So right there, record-breaking. Strongest hurricane on the Pacific side of Mexico. And let's go over there really quick. I still have this pulled up from my last video. I would encourage you to watch my last video. It was all about everything that we know about the temple in Jerusalem, or at least everything that I have, which I think I pretty much have it all. If you have any further quotes or anything, send them my way. So here's Acapulco. Acapulco was already hit. Let's see, when was this? On the 10th of this month by Hurricane Lydia. And there were videos coming out of there of flash flooding. That's why I have this here. Well, now here we are on the 25th. I'm recording this on the 25th, Wednesday. And now they got hit by Hurricane Otis. Okay. And then there was this hurricane up here. Which one was this again? Hurricane Norma. So Mexico keeps getting hit by all these hurricanes, and it's causing all this like flash flooding all along their west coast. All right. So, quote, a nightmare scenario is unfolding for southern Mexico this evening, with rapidly intensifying Otis approaching the coastline. The NHC warned in a forecast discussion Tuesday night after Otis intensified at an explosive rate. Continuing with the quote, this is an extremely serious situation for the Acapulco metropolitan area, with the core of the destructive hurricane likely to come near or over that large city early on Wednesday. There are no hurricanes on record even close to this intensity for this part of Mexico. Residents in southern Mexico were warned to brace for quote-unquote potentially catastrophic storm surge with quote-unquote life-threatening coastal flooding, huge waves, destructive winds, and flooding rainfall. Okay, that's all I have for this one. And then I got this article from local10.com. It says, nightmare scenario, Otis stuns forecasters, rapidly strengthens, and strikes Acapulco as a Category 5 hurricane. There's some additional details here I wanted to share with you. Only 24 hours before it hit, a tropical storm, Otis, was forecast to come ashore along Mexico's Pacific coast as a Category 1 hurricane. So that's quite the difference from what they were expecting. Instead, the storm rapidly strengthened 110 miles per hour in 24 hours, a rate exceeded only once by Hurricane Patricia in 2015. By any observed Pacific or Atlantic hurricane striking near Acapulco around 2:25 a.m. Eastern Time Wednesday. That didn't really... Okay. At a rate exceeded only once, Hurricane Patricia in 2015. At a rate exceeded only once by any observed Pacific or Atlantic hurricane. Okay. Break. Striking near Acapulco near around 2:25 a.m. Eastern Time Wednesday as a catastrophic Category 5 hurricane with estimated winds of 165 miles per hour, the strongest hurricane on record to hit Mexico from the Pacific side. The stunning rate of strength, so fast by late Tuesday that satellite estimates couldn't keep pace, was poorly forecast by all major hurricane models, with virtually none predicting more than a borderline Category 1 hurricane before landfall in Mexico. Such unforeseen rapid intensification from a tropical storm to a Category 5 hurricane on approach to land underscores what's long been viewed as a hurricane forecaster's worst nightmare. Okay, so a hurricane forecaster's worst nightmare just happened. The National Hurricane Center characterized the situation as a nightmare scenario, quote unquote, for southern Mexico, including the Acapulco metropolitan area, home to over 1 million people, noting, quote, no other hurricanes on record even close to this intensity for this part of Mexico, end quote. The few hurricanes on record to pass near Acapulco never exceeded Category 1 status. Pauline in October 1997, Bridget in June 1971, and an unnamed hurricane in June 1951. Otis was an unprecedented landfall for this stretch of coastline. Okay, so let's take a look at this, and then I want to show you, I've updated my spreadsheet that tracks hurricanes for the year, but let's look at these videos first. So I already saw that. By the way, if you ever want to come back and see these again, or you want to look further into it, I have all these reposted on my X account. Así estamos en Hotel Copacabana. So here we are in the Hotel Copacabana. So this is like an early morning video. Obviously, it's still dark outside. Vortex. Here's some of the images from the wrath of Otis in Acapulco. Hashtag Guerrero. Heavy structural damage, blasted trees and buildings. More scenes like this going to be revealed come daylight, unfortunately. And I do have some of those. I do have some of those pictures, but you can tell just from the nighttime pictures that it was pretty bad. Pretty bad. Here you go. One of the common scenes with this type of stuff, people using brooms and things like that to sweep water out of their place of work or worship sometimes. Reed Timmer, PhD. Here's a couple other pictures. Oh, those are pretty similar to what we already saw, though. Hospital after the impact of Hurricane Otis. And then the winds were more than 265 kilometers per hour. I couldn't imagine being in a hospital and having something that's bad enough to where I'm in a hospital bed and then having to worry about a Category 5 storm. And just look at the wind coming in through the hospital. I don't even see any windows. Of course, it's not the best video, but it looks almost as though they might as well be outside, but they're not. B&O News, conditions worsening in Acapulco. Webcams de Mexico. Images of the interior of Hotel Princess in Acapulco this morning after Otis Tocata, I don't know what that is, Earth, this early morning after it made landfall, I guess, this really early morning as a hurricane category 5. Currently, it's a category 4. Sorry for the rough translation. It's sorry. The force of Acapulco. Yep, it looks pretty violent. Volcaholic. This is from a condo in Acapulco, Diamante. Horrific. I dread to see what daylight is going to show. Broken heart emoji. Well, at nighttime, it looks just like everything everywhere got mixed together like a blender. That's what it looks like to me. Absolute devastation. This is the Mundo Imperial Hotel in Acapulco. These images are from the Regional General Hospital 1 of the IMSS in Acapulco. And yeah, once again, it just looks like everything's been put through a blender. Gosh. Okay, what about this? Breaking. The situation in the Hotel Mundo Imperial in Acapulco. A lot of furniture damage from the Hurricane Otis. Wow. Destruction and chaos left by Hurricane Otis after hitting the port of Acapulco. And I guess Guerrero. I guess that's like another locale over there. So yeah, everything destroyed pretty much right there. A bunch of unrecognizable objects. Robert McQueen. The hurricane disappeared or dissipated. Por tu estúpidas. Okay, sorry. I can't. Telo of cobrar. It's gonna cover you. Okay, I don't know. Sorry, I can't. It's been too long. Okay, it's been too long. I don't speak Spanish every day. It's been a while since I have. Catastrophic flooding at the entrance to Acapulco. So here we have the submerged cars and vehicles. Of course, there's going to be flash flooding associated with this. Nahel Belgers. Acapulco, Mexico might have just become the first city of over 1 million inhabitants in the world to experience the eye wall of a Category 5 storm. Otis made history on so many levels, a storm we won't forget anytime soon. And just like all large events like this, we're probably not going to get all the details until days afterward, or even weeks, potentially. This is the Princess Hotel in Acapulco. That's some serious damage. Yeah, it's like serious damage on every single level of that hotel. Every single floor. Jeez. The Princess Hotel in Acapulco, devastation. Here are the first daylight images coming out of Acapulco. This is Miguel Alemán, Coastal Boulevard. Not looking good at all. Let's look at it closer. Looks like it's either flooding or there's a bunch of like mud that's flowed or been deposited in the streets or something. But you can see all the damage to this building right here. Let's go to this next one. There's an H&M right there. Looks like there's a lot of damage to that building. And yeah, just a bunch of unrecognizable objects and things that look like they've been put through a blender. Whoa, geez, this video really shows how bad the situation is in Acapulco. Driving down the street, and it doesn't look like you can get very far. before you hit some roadblocks here. Well, I guess you can go around here. Have you ever been to Acapulco? I remember hearing Acapulco like since I was young. You know, I think it's been mentioned a couple times in Looney Tunes cartoons and other places. I always thought it was kind of a funny name, but it seems like it's a nice place to visit. But have you been there before? Put it in the comments below. More images coming out of Acapulco, not looking good at all. Oh, look, that's a crane. This crane, I think that's a crane. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a crane, like a construction crane. It's been knocked over. I know with construction cranes, they have it where they allow it to move with the wind. Like they like unlock it. But I wonder if that wasn't enough since it was a Category 5. Oh my gosh, this stuff all over in the streets. All right, so that's what I have for that. So that just happened. And if there's more developments, I'll let you know. I'll check on the death toll and stuff. Let's move on now to Erdogan. Turkey's Erdogan, Hamas aren't terrorists. They're a liberation group. This is coming from the leader of a country that's part of NATO. That's a little concerning. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan is in his strongest comments yet on the Gaza conflict, said on Wednesday that the Palestinian militant group Hamas was not a terrorist organization, but a liberation group fighting to protect Palestinian lands and people. Quote, Hamas is not a terrorist organization. It is a liberation group, Mujahideen, waging a battle to protect its lands and people, he said. Erdogan also slammed Western powers that have voiced support for Israel's retaliation against Hamas, saying, quote, Western tears shed for Israel are a manifestation of fraud. It's a manifestation of fraud. Because we're sad about what happened, that is showing... I don't understand that at all. Many of Turkey's NATO allies consider Hamas a terrorist group, and Erdogan's comments drew a swift rebuke from Italy's Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini, who said they were, quote, grave and disgusting and did not help the de-escalation. No, definitely not. I will propose to my colleague, Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani, to send a formal protest and to summon the Turkish ambassador, Salvini said in a note. Erdogan accused Israel of taking advantage of Turkey's good intentions. Turkey had previously been working to mend long-strained ties with Israel, and Erdogan said he had now canceled a planned trip to Israel because of the events in Gaza. Turkey, which hosts members of Hamas on its territory, backs... I didn't know that until this article. They host members of Hamas in Turkey. Backs a two-state solution to the decades-old Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And then I have just a little bit more here. This is from Euronews. Hamas are not terrorists, says Turkey's President Erdogan. His fiery speech was made in front of Turkish lawmakers who chanted, "Down with Israel" and "Allah Akbar." I thought it was Allahu Akbar. I thought it was Allahu Akbar. Isn't that it? But this is saying Allah Akbar. God is great. Quote, relations could have been different, but that will no longer happen, unfortunately, added the Turkish president. Erdogan condemned Israel, claiming, quote, you will not find any other state whose army behaves with such inhumanity. Well, except for Hamas, since they're not terrorists, right? They're the ones that started this, and they're the ones that are torturing people and taking captives, and that is the most ludicrous thing that you could possibly say after what just happened. That is just absolute insanity. So, anyway, it's interesting. I don't know what's going to happen, obviously. Like, how this war is going to unfold. We're still waiting for the ground invasion to take place. And then it seems like after that, that's when things are really going to take off. I don't know. Is there ever a chance that Turkey can join in? I don't know. That would make things a little awkward when it comes to U.S. support for Israel, being that the U.S. and Turkey are both members of NATO. I did want to show you something, though. I just thought about this right now. Let's go to my Second Coming timeline. I've seen before that Erdogan and maybe others in Turkey, I don't know. I don't know if there are groups that are have the same philosophy as him, but you know, Turkey used to be essentially the Ottoman Empire, and that came to an end on the 3rd of March, 1924. Ottoman Empire ends, caliphate abolished. And just like the Soviet Union and Putin, how he kind of, experts agree that he kind of wants to regain that status or bring back the glory days or make Russia strong again like it used to be. It seems like there's that same mentality, at least with Erdogan, at the very least. I'm pretty sure I've seen that before. So the Ottoman Empire has been gone. Next year, it'll be 100 years, actually. It's almost been 100 years since the end of the Ottoman Empire. I do know that Turkey is kind of like in a struggle with Saudi Arabia as like the defenders of Islam. It seems like the three big players, like when it comes to that kind of thing, is Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. You know, but Turkey is one of the big players. So I don't know. I just think it's curious. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Before we move on to quickened, translated, you know, caught up, transfigured, and all that stuff, I forgot to show you this really quick. This is my tracker that I use to track hurricanes. And I rely on Wikipedia for these numbers because otherwise it would just be too much and I just don't have the time, but I feel like these are reasonably accurate. And so I've updated it, and this is where we're at. So let me zoom in. First, let's look at the Atlantic. So since the last time that I updated this, we've had one more Category 2 hurricane, one more tropical storm, and one more tropical depression. And so this is where we're at right here for the Atlantic. So it seems like it's turning out to be maybe a worse year than last year when you compare all these things, major hurricanes. We've already beat last year in terms of total storms. And now the Atlantic just needs one more to tie with 2022. But I feel like it's probably unlikely that it'll get as bad as it did in the year 2020 with 14 total hurricanes and 30 total storms and 7 major hurricanes, which is a Category 3 or stronger. So that's the Atlantic. Here's the Pacific. So we have one new Category 5, and of course that's Hurricane Otis, and then one new Category 4 since last time. And so in the Pacific, we are now tied with last year in terms of total hurricanes, and twice as many major hurricanes, and then about the same number of total storms. And when you go down, if you just pay attention to the colors here, the shades of gray, when you go down, you can see that there were less when you go back in time, except for maybe in the early 90s. So it seems like the early 90s in 2014 and 2015, around that time frame, those were like the heaviest time for hurricanes. And then right now it is a little bit heavy. I guess we'll have to see how the rest of this year goes for the Pacific. And then over here, I have the total between Atlantic and Pacific. So these are just hurricanes that the United States tracks. It's not including, typhoons and cyclones and stuff like that in the Indian Ocean or the Western Pacific. But anyway, yeah, this year is already, it's pretty much worse, I'd say. It's worse than it was last year. Almost twice as many major hurricanes compared to last year and the year before. So I don't know, it's kind of up there. So that's where we're at. Okay, now let's go ahead and let's look at this whole concept of being translated. And let me just spell it out right now. It's very simple. It's very simple. First, there's transfiguration. Transfiguration. That's something that happens when you have like a vision and you're in the presence of God, like Joseph Smith, or on the Mount of Transfiguration, they had a special experience there. Moses, going up on Mount Sinai, being in the presence of God, it's like a temporary change on your body. And it seems like it's similar, if not equivalent, to being quickened, from what I can tell. And I don't think it's an exact science that we understand. It's not clearly spelled out, but whenever the term transfigured is used, it means like a short duration, temporary change on your body so that your body can withstand, the presence of God, higher energy levels, whatever's associated with that. That's transfiguration. Short change to your body. That's it. Then there's resurrection. We know that happens, once we're done with mortality, you're resurrected to one of 3 degrees of glory. Or there's a handful that'll become sons of perdition, but then you're resurrected and you have your permanent body for all of eternity, right? In between those two, there's another state of mortality called being quickened or translated. And unlike transfiguration, it's more permanent in nature. Permanent meaning within this mortal life. Okay? That's it. That is it. That is it. There is one more little thing. Within being translated or quickened, it's the same thing. It's just 2 different ways of saying the same thing. There are special cases, like the 3 Nephites, where essentially they're in this state of being translated, but they cannot procreate. However, that's because they have a special mission. For all intents and purposes, they lived their life, they had their children, and then the Lord allowed them to remain till the end of the world, and so they're not having children during that time. Now, with us, those who go into the millennium, everybody, members of the church, as well as everybody else, everyone's going to be quickened and have a change on their body. And it's going to be equivalent to the 3 Nephites in John, except for we will be able to procreate because we will still be in mortality. But you have to have a changed body in order to move into the millennium because the earth itself is going to change. Okay? It's as simple as that. It is as simple as that. But let's go through the different quotes here that word it better than I do. Okay. Joseph Fielding Smith, Doctrines of Salvation, Volume 2, page 404. Okay, listen carefully and replay it if that's what you need to do. Translated beings still mortal. Translated beings are still mortal and will have to pass through the experience of death or the separation of the spirit and the body, although this will be instantaneous. So what he's referring to here is that in the millennium, the entire world will be in a translated state, but there's not going to be death anymore the way that we know it. You're not going to have your body buried in the ground. You're going to change in the twinkling of an eye from a mortal translated state, or if you prefer, a mortal quickened state, to a resurrected state. Mortality to immortality. Okay? The people of the city of Enoch, Elijah, and others who received this great blessing of translation in ancient times, before the coming of our Lord, could not have received the resurrection or the change from mortality to immortality at that time, because the Lord had not paid the debt, which frees us from mortality and grants us the resurrection and immortal life. Okay, so let's chew on that for a minute. So if the resurrection had already taken place, they would not have been translated. They would have just been, well, I suppose they would have been translated, and then after that, once they reach 100 years, then they would just change in the twinkling of an eye. So essentially, Enoch, Elijah, Moses, others, Melchizedek, they were translated and lived in a translated state until the resurrection happened. Okay, let's continue. Christ is the resurrection and the life, and the first fruits of them that slept. Therefore, none could pass from mortality to immortality until our Savior completed his work for the redemption of man and had gained the keys of the resurrection, being the first to rise, having life in himself and the power to lay down his life and take it up again, thus freeing all men from the bondage which the fall had placed upon them. Okay. And I can't remember if it's in these quotes I'm about to read, but when you have like these special exceptions, like you have Elijah or Moses, the reason why they were translated is because for whatever reason, you have to have a body in order to hold these priesthood keys. I don't know why. It hasn't really been explained. But remember how they came to Joseph Smith in the Kirtland Temple? They had to have a physical body in order to do that. So first they were translated, and then they lived all the way till the translation, and then they were resurrected. And then at that point, they held on to their keys, and then they transferred those keys to Joseph Smith at the Kirtland Temple. So that's why they were translated. And I think there's one here that explains it. I know that I've read it before, but okay. Bruce R. McConkie, The Millennial Messiah, pages 284 to 285. After those in the city of holiness were translated and taken up into heaven, so that's the city of Enoch, without tasting death, so that Zion as a people and a congregation had fled from the battle-scarred surface of the earth, the Lord sought others among men who would serve him. From the days of Enoch to the flood, new converts and true believers, except those needed to tarry or to carry out the Lord's purposes among mortals, were translated. Okay. So the city of Enoch goes, and then you have people that join the church, and then they become translated, and then go join the city of Enoch. Okay. And the Holy Ghost fell on many, and they were caught up by the powers of heaven into Zion, in Moses 7, verse 27. And men having this faith, the faith of Enoch and his people, coming up unto this order of God, the holy order of priesthood, which we call the Melchizedek priesthood, were translated and taken up into heaven. Joseph Smith translation, Genesis 14:32. After the flood, righteous men, knowing what had been before their day, continued to seek a place in Zion. Of those who lived in the days of Melchizedek, it is written, and now Melchizedek was a priest of this order, therefore he obtained peace in Salem, and was called the Prince of Peace. And his people brought righteousness and obtained heaven, and sought for the city of Enoch, which God had taken before, separating it from the earth, having reserved it unto the latter days, or the end of the world. And hath said and sworn with an oath that the heavens and the earth should come together, and the sons of God should be tried so as by fire. But thereafter, except a few isolated instances, those of Moses, Elijah, Alma, the son of Alma, John the Beloved, and the 3 Nephites, are the only ones of which we know, except in these cases, each involving a special purpose, the Lord ceased translating faithful people. Rather, they were permitted to die and go into the spirit world, there to perform the ever-increasing work needed in that sphere. We are led to believe that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and some of the faithful of old, continued to seek an inheritance in the city of Enoch. Paul says they looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God, and they confessed they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For they declare plainly that they seek a country. Okay, so there was translation before the resurrection, and it was actually generally the case from the time of Enoch until about the time of Abraham. And then after that, people died, except for people that had special missions, like Moses, Elijah, Alma the son of Alma, John the Beloved, and the 3 Nephites, and possibly others. Those were the only exceptions. Okay. Let me unhighlight that. That was a new one. Also in Millennial Messiah, this is on pages 257 to, 578 to 579. Raphael, who we assume to have been Enoch or someone from his dispensation, came and committed such keys as appertained to that day. No doubt these included the power to use the priesthood to translate men, as will be the state of all those who abide the day of the second coming. Everybody across the entire world, everyone is going to be translated in the millennium. Everyone is going to be translated in the millennium. Okay, let's move on. This is also Millennial Messiah, pages 644 to 645. Some mortals have been translated. In this state, they are not subject to sorrow or to disease or to death. Now, this is something to look forward to. I am excited for that. First, I hope that I make it into the millennium. We should never be complacent and always strive to do our best and be righteous, be on the covenant path. But if we make it, that's going to be amazing. I'm hoping that my body and your body gets fixed, whatever your disease may be or mine. Okay, no longer does blood, the life-giving element of our present mortality, flow in their veins. Also something to look forward to. I cannot stand blood. Procreation ceases. Okay, now this is talking about not during the millennium. This is talking about like the 3 Nephites and stuff like that. Procreation ceases. If they then had children, their offspring would be denied a mortal probation, which all worthy spirits must receive in due course. They have power to move and live in both a mortal and unseen sphere. Talking about the 3 Nephites. All translated beings undergo another change in their bodies when they gain full immortality. This change is the equivalent of a resurrection. All mortals, after death, are also resurrected. In the resurrected state, they are immortal and eternal in nature, and those among them who are privileged to live in the family unit have spirit children. Millennial man will live in a state, look at this. Now this is talking about us, hopefully, if we make it. Millennial man will live in a state akin to translation. His body will be changed so that it is no longer subject to disease or death as we know it, although he will be changed in the twinkling of an eye to full immortality when he is 100 years of age. Okay, so this is a difference between us and the 3 Nephites because they've been here longer than 100 years. So them and everybody else that had this, that presumably, well, yeah, they were alive in a translated state more than 100 years. But for us in the millennium, you're not going to continue for the full 1,000 years in a translated state. Your life will end at 100 years. Okay. So, although he will be changed in the twinkling of an eye to full immortality when he is 100 years of age, he will, however, have children. Okay, so that's another difference. That's another difference between millennial translated and then these special cases like the three Nephites. They're not having children. They had their time to have children, okay? And they go beyond 100 years because they're performing a special mission. We will not. So we live to 100 years of age, but during that time, we can have children because it's going to be our time of regular mortality. Okay. So he will, however, have children, and mortal life of a millennial kind will continue. We shall speak more particularly of all this shortly. During the millennium, there will, of course, be two kinds of people on earth. Okay, look. Two kinds of people on earth. There will be those who are mortal and those who are immortal. Well, what does that mean? Oh, well, he says it right here. There will be those who have been changed or quickened or transfigured or translated. Words fail us to describe their state. So see right here, these words don't really mean anything. They don't. All three of them are basically the same thing. It seems to me that when you read the scriptures and you're talking about these temporary changes, they usually prefer the word transfigured. But I don't think there's really a difference. Look how Bruce R. McConkie's using it. Quickened, transfigured, translated. And there's some people that get really picky about this for some reason, and I'm not sure what it's based on. I have no idea what it's based on. The three great divisions is regular mortality like we have right now, transfigured, translated, quickened mortality, number 2, and resurrection. That is it. That is it. That is it. So, because you could say that, like Joseph Smith being transfigured, for example, like that's being in category 2, but you're only in category 2 for just a short time. And then you go back to category 1. That's how you can think of it. Category 1, mortality. Category 2, translated. Category 3, resurrected. And within category 2, there are some people that are only in that category for like maybe a few hours or a couple days. That's like one subcategory of category 2. And the other subcategory are long duration people like the three Nephites. But they're still category 2. And their bodies are just a little bit different in that they don't die at 100 years old and they don't have children anymore. But it's still category 2. Category 1, category 2, category 3. That is it. Sorry. I'm passionate about this because it comes up sometimes and people are so passionate over basically nothing. I know that they read things in like, it's kind of hard to like understand, I guess, because you have 3 words. Why are there 3 words if they're not 3 different things? But they're the same thing. They're the same thing. It's just that transfigured is normally used more when it's like a temporary category 2. Okay. So there are those who, so the 2 types, mortal and immortal. So category 1, category 3. Or, sorry, scratch that. There's going to be category 2, and then there's going to be category 3 people. That's it. There's not going to be any more category 1. Category 1 is before the millennium. Okay, there are those who are mortal and those who are immortal. There will be those who have been changed or quickened or transfigured or translated. Words fail to describe their state. And those who have gone through a second change in the twinkling of an eye, so as to become eternal in nature. So resurrected. There will be those who are on probation, for whom earth life is a probationary estate, and who are thus working out their own salvation, and those who have already overcome the world and have entered into a fullness of eternal joy. There will be those who will yet die in the sense of being changed from their quickened state to a state of immortality, and those who, having previously died, are then living in a resurrected state. There will be those who are subject to the kings and priests who rule forever in the house of Israel, and those who, as kings and priests, exercise power and dominion in their everlasting kingdom of him whose we are. There will be those who, as mortals, provide bodies for spirit children of the Father, for the spirits whose right it is to come to earth and gain houses for their eternal spirits. And those who, as immortals, Abraham is one, are already begetting spirit children of their own. And this is another thing that's come up before. I can't remember when, but Abraham, according to Bruce R. McConkie, Abraham is already at that point where he's starting to have spirit children, which that's amazing that he's already to that point. There are those for whom the fullness of eternal glory is ahead, and those who, again, like Abraham, have already entered into their exaltation and sit upon thrones and are not angels, but are gods forever and ever. We have heretofore summarized such things as we know about the immortal beings who shall dwell from time to time on the earth during the millennium. He's talking about resurrected people. We shall now consider such things as have been revealed with reference to those who are born and who live here during the 1,000 years of plenty and peace. So this whole paragraph was just showing you the difference between quickened people and resurrected people. There are only those those categories: quickened and resurrected. If you're still in your mortal probationary state, you will be quickened. It doesn't matter if you're a member of the church. It doesn't matter if you're someone living a terrestrial law and you're not a member of the church. Everybody, the entire population of the earth, is going to be in a quickened or transfigured or translated state. And then everyone that's already died before, or people that die during the millennium, once they hit 100 years old, they will be resurrected. And they will be on the earth from time to time, but not necessarily the entire time. Okay, let me take the highlight off of that. Okay, also in Millennial Messiah, page 658. Isaiah gives us these poetically phrased particulars about animal life during the millennium. The wolf and the lamb shall feed together, he says, and the lion shall eat straw like the bullock. Implicit in this pronouncement is the fact that man, in all forms of life, will be vegetarians in the coming day. The eating of meat will cease because, for one thing, death as we know it ceases. There will be no shedding of blood because man and beast are changed, quickened, and blood no longer flows in their veins. And dust shall the serpent's meat, and dust shall be the serpent's meat, meaning, as we suppose, that they shall no longer eat mice and vermin and animal life. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, saith the Lord. And further, the wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf, and the young lion, and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. And the cow and the bear shall feed, their young ones shall lie down together. Why is there a period right there? And the lion shall eat straw like the ox, and the suckling child shall play on the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand on the cockatrice den, or adder's den. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain. Okay? Now, we just talked in the last video about animal sacrifice. Joseph Smith and Joseph Fielding Smith said that part of the restoration is going to be animal sacrifice. It wasn't part of the Mosaic Law, like it wasn't exclusive to the Mosaic Law. It existed before the Mosaic Law. and was included in the Mosaic Law. But just like how baptism, repentance existed before the Mosaic Law, so did animal sacrifice. And so they say, both of them said that there's going to be animal sacrifice again. So if what Bruce R. McConkie right here is saying is true, then it must be that maybe before, like immediately before the whole world is quickened, maybe that's when there's going to be the animal sacrifice, because Joseph Fielding Smith said it's only going to be temporary, and then later it's going to change to some other type of sacrifice. Maybe that's what he meant, that just before the millennium, before the quickening of everybody and all the animals, there will be some sacrifices, but then after that, no longer. I don't know. That's just a guess based on what we've read. Sorry, let me clean this up a little bit. I take out the citations here just because they kind of clutter the quote. And you can always go to this yourself. Go to Millennial Messiah and look those up if you want. Okay, but that's it for translation, translated, quickened, caught up state, whatever. Okay. Along with this, just because this comes up from time to time, is people will ask, well, where does the whole thing come from about 100 years of age? So this goes along with what we were just reading, and then I'll end on this. Isaiah 65 verses 20 to 22. There shall no more be thence an infant of days, nor an old man that hath not filled his days. For the child shall die 100 years old. There it is, right there. For the child shall die 100 years old, but the sinner being 100 years old shall be accursed. And they shall build houses and inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards and eat the fruit of them. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. For as the days of a tree are, the days of my people and mine elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. D&C 101, 29 to 31. And there shall be no sorrow, because there is no death. In that day an infant shall not die until he is old, and his life shall be as the age of a tree. And when he dies, he shall not sleep, that is to say, in the earth, but shall be changed in the twinkling of an eye, and shall be caught up, and his rest shall be glorious. Now, in this case, caught up is referring to being resurrected, going from a quickened state to a resurrected state. So I really don't think that you should put very rigid interpretations of like there's a difference between caught up and translated, because that doesn't seem to be the case, and that's not how these prophets and apostles in the scriptures use these words. Okay, Joseph Fielding Smith, Doctrines of Salvation, Volume 1, page 54. In that day there will be no death until men are old. Children will not die, but will live to the age of a tree. Isaiah says this is 100 years. When the time comes for men to die, they will be changed in the twinkling of an eye, and there will be no graves. And then I think we already read this. I'll just read it again because it's short. Bruce R. McConkie, The Millennial Messiah, page 648. Similarly, the faithful saints who are alive when the Lord comes, and who are caught up to meet him in the midst of the pillar of heaven, shall be quickened. Their bodies shall be changed from mortality as we know it to a millennial type mortality, to the type of mortality possessed by translated beings. Those who are born during the millennium will enjoy this same quickened state, and all of them, each in his order, will be changed in the twinkling of an eye to his resurrected and immortal state when he becomes 100 years of age. Now, this is one thing that seems to suggest, like when the saints are initially caught up, I think it is only righteous members of the church. I think it's essentially what we're talking about when we're talking about the 5 virgins, those that go to the wedding feast. I think that those are the first ones to be quickened. but the entire world, everybody in the millennium is going to be quickened, whether you're part of that group or not. If you're living a terrestrial life or a celestial life and you survive and go into the millennium, you're not counted among the wicked. Everyone is going to be quickened. So I hope that clarifies it. Now, I know it's inevitable. I'm going to be doing a video about this again in the future. And maybe at that point, I'll have some more quotes. If you have quotes, feel free to send them my way. If you ever say anything in the comments, like if you say, well, that's not true because so-and-so said blah, 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 or that's not true because da, 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 please leave a reference. Leave a citation. Don't just say things, because it doesn't matter if you say something if you can't back it up. That's why I have this spreadsheet. And this is why I think my channel has value, because I can show you where these ideas are coming from, and they're not my ideas. And sometimes these ideas seem to conflict, or it's kind of ambiguous, but it's better than just saying things without any sort of reference. So if you put something in the comments, I mean, I'm not your dad. You can do whatever you want, but I would highly encourage you, if you're trying to give any sort of validity to what you're saying, leave a reference. You know, copy and paste. That's even better. Copy and paste from your source. And I know that a lot of these things are confusing. You know, I've been doing this for a little over 2 years now, and there's certain things that are only now becoming solidified in my mind. And the reason why is because as we study these kind of like small topics, these esoteric, niche type topics, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot that's said about them. They may make an appearance in the scriptures, just like a brief appearance, or they may be said by just a couple people, like it may be expounded by just a couple people. And so you and I and everybody, we all want to know as much as we can. But with some topics, we just don't have that information, or just very little has been revealed. And that's okay. That's why we have to remain flexible. And the little that we do have, you know, we should probably give credit, like I said, to Bruce R. McConkie. There's a lot of things that he has said that only he has said. Being the fact that he's the only one, maybe take it with a little grain of salt, because doctrine of the church is repeated. But if there's nobody else that said it, probably go with it anyway. But just don't be surprised if he or somebody else ends up being wrong, if they're the only one that talked about a particular subject. So anyway, so that's going to be it. That's it. That's it for this one. Hope I clarified some things. Say a prayer for the people in Mexico right now. I know there's been other disasters going on in the world. I'll try and keep on top of those the best that I can, and report that to you. And that's it. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.